Welcome everyone to Zoom O'Clock with your host, Tessy Antony de Nassau. I have a very inspirational guest here for you today. Berthold Karlic from Austria. Hi Berthold, how are you?
Hi, fine. Pleasure to be here with you, Tessy.
It is such a pleasure, and I know that your schedule is so busy, specifically now. There's so much happening in your line of work, which we're going to get into in a few minutes. And so I appreciate your time extremely. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure.
So let me introduce Berthold very, very briefly to all of you, so you can get a little bit of a taste of our inspirational guest yourself. Berthold, he is a serial entrepreneur. He's the founder of Venionaire Capital. He's involved in many, many startup initiatives, which we will also be discussing. He is the president of the European Super Angels Club and the founder and academic board of the Business Angel Institute, among many, many other things and many other accolades. Berthold, wow, what a CV. And just how do you get the time for all of that at the same time? It's incredible.
Well, I have the honor to be in the forefront of many initiatives, but as you can imagine, all initiatives actually have great teams behind, and there's just role models, people that have regular attention by media needed to get the voice out for the ecosystem. The startup ecosystem in general in Europe is rather young. So if you compare it to the UK or to the United States, we're still behind, right? We're catching up fast, but we're still behind. I think everybody involved in the ecosystem needs to put on a lot of hats and needs to push, the whole thing forward. But we see more and more talent coming back also after exits, and they get involved themselves, and that's great to see. Also in our company, there's more and more people working with us, and they help me to get everything organized and to keep the pace.
Wow, definitely something a lot of people can relate to who are listening to this. So let's get this discussion started. This is our first Zoom O'Clock with you among many, I assume, because you just have an incredible portfolio of expertise and stories. But let me start this off today with a topic which is it's a topic that is being discussed a lot in your domain, also in my domain, which is ESG and the greenwashing which comes with it. Nowadays, everyone is an ESG expert. Everyone works kind of in climate change and sustainability. And it's really difficult to kind of like separate the weeds from the flowers because there's just so many of them now. So what does that mean for you in your domain to be ESG compliant in the innovation investment space? And what is your opinion on the greenwashing particularly, and your experience as well?
An incredibly smart question, an important one to ask. These days, I would say the word climate change and Green Deal is as inflationary used as the term startup itself. Driven by regulation even. Now the European Union actually decided that every regulated fund in the European Union has to declare if they're ESG, sort of ESG, or non-ESG focused. By this, they don't explain exactly what environmental social governance really means, right? Do you have a stronger social focus? Do you have an environmental focus? Do you have a financial sustainability focus because you want to help people to, get out of the debt trap? There's so many ways you can touch the topic of sustainability and ESG that is really hard to differentiate. And if you dig a little bit deeper into this topic and look at just standard equity funds or fixed income funds from banks provided, then you will find that like 10, 15 years ago, there were banks like Sarrazin from Switzerland they were the first ones to actually really, wrap their heads around this topic. In Austria, we even had the WWF and Amnesty International figuring out their own criteria for sustainable investments, and they have set funds together with Erste Bank, a large banking group here. And more came, and then even the Vatican made their own rules for sustainable investments. And as you can imagine, those were totally different from Islamic finance, for example, right? So there is so many ways you can touch this topic. And now there's a regulation that says, hey, you need to declare if you're ESG compliant. And I had this discussion just last week with a good friend where he said, well, you need to make a new fund for climate change. And I asked why. When we are investing, we invest for the good. We want to solve a problem. We want to make the world a little bit smaller. We want to have more inclusion, right? We want to get people access to what they need, right? We want to help them to solve problems. It should be possible with the internet to work from anywhere in the world. Today there is more chances to become a tech billionaire than ever before. You can do that pretty much with a laptop, a smart brain, and internet access. Yeah, it doesn't matter where you sit. You don't have to be in Berlin or in London or in New York or Silicon Valley. This is not needed anymore. And when we look at companies, we actually do something that is, I wouldn't say specific. I would say this is actually something I find with most of our investors that we work with, if not all. They always invest, of course, because it's an interesting field and there is upside ahead, but they invest because there's a purpose behind. They invest because they want to work with smart, talented people. They want to, get hands on the newest innovations and technologies that spin off from universities. They want to, make the world a better place, make it smarter, help, in precision diagnostics to help cancer therapies. They want to increase security in the cyber world. Because I mean, in these days, the highest amount of crime rising is cybercrime, right? Money laundering with the whole rise of crypto, etc., is a super big issue. And I mean, we have a tight regulated financial market, but then we have innovation in the financial market. You need to regulate that as well. And I wouldn't say everybody investing in crypto, for example, is a fraud or wants to save taxes, right? They all want to know what they are actually doing here. And how much tax does this actually imply? They want to pay that. It's a little bit more complicated than the traditional markets, and it's not done for you. Then, like it is with a traditional bank, when you buy an equity fund and then you sell it. In Austria, for example, your capital gains tax is automatically paid for you. So there's no headache for you as a user, right? Mm-hmm. Investing in crypto, and you sell it for less of a holding period of a year. Actually, your standard tax comes into place. So your employment tax is the rate that you have to pay on that. And now there's differentiation between different assets you can buy in the tokenized space. And this is where it gets really, really difficult with airdrops, hard forks, and all this special issues that come with this space. And we look for companies that solve all these kinds of problems. Actually, to all of the problems just mentioned, we have a portfolio company tackling this issue, this problem, and solving it quite smart with a good business model behind it. And I agree. I mean, there's nothing bad in solving a problem and making some money with it.
Yeah, definitely. No, it is really a space, and you hear it more and more. Also, I myself and my partner, we are also crypto investors and everything. And it's always like people, it kind of leaves a bad taste in people's mouths because there's so much stigma around it and people don't understand it. So it's definitely something when you say the frustrations of how do you regulate it and how can you really find your way in it to be compliant, because people naturally want to be good people. They don't do things like bad people, right? And it is really still a big of a maze, if you want. So talking about then, so you said you have one of these companies in your portfolio, maybe you want to mention them, but also talking about that, what is your pre-selection process? How do you identify companies you actually want to work with? Because startups, there's as many as grass outside in my garden. Like there's a lot happening in the tech space, right? So what do you do and how do you know which one is the good one amongst all of this? And what would you give as a tip? What is your go-to kind of framework?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, startups are out there, and it's super hard to find the needle in the haystack, right? And I think first of all, there's a lot of companies that need to find the right fit for an investor, and every investor, to understand if it's a fit or not, first needs to understand himself or herself, right? So they need to know where they are particularly good at, yeah, where they can help. And this is a secret sauce that every individual can add to a startup investment. For us, we do this as a job, right? We have a firm around this. We have a global network of experts around it, but we are not experts in everything, right? So we have specialized teams for certain things where we can help. And we are very aware of that. So when we look at companies, there's one general thing that we always want to see. We want to find basically the shovel in the gold rush, right? So pretty much you can compare that to, I don't know, in the crypto space, we wouldn't invest just in Bitcoin or in any coin that we find. We want to find a solution that is needed to drive the ecosystem of the blockchain space. So we invested, for example, in FLOVTEC, which is a crypto market regulated in Switzerland that helps this next generation of the internet, these tokenized products, to actually have liquidity. And liquidity means they're more attractive to the market, so more money will actually go into those projects, and this makes those projects in the end happen, right? So if there is a liquid token, people would actually be more attracted to buying it. You can think of a traditional stock. You wouldn't buy a penny stock that is not traded, right? Because when you need your money back, then you need to wait for somebody else to buy it. If it's a liquid one, then you would rather buy it. This is why most people, for confidence, end up with investing in blue chips. Not because it's the best companies and the valuations are great, but they're just, you know, they have the security that when they want to sell it, they can sell it. And for the crypto space, this you can say is times 100, maybe times 1,000, more complicated. And there's so many new projects out there where I wouldn't know which project to pick. I wouldn't know which project is the next unicorn or decacorn, right? So I'd rather invest in those that enable those technologies to have a chance on the market. So shovel in the gold rush, right? This is the needle in the haystack that we look for. We always look for that. For the banking industry, when fintechs came up, everybody said, hey, you need to find the next challenger bank. We said, no, we believe that global financial markets get more complicated because regulators are becoming more and more complicated. Anti-money laundering, terrorism financing, this is a super complicated issue. And when you talk to a board member of a large bank today, they will tell you that pretty much 60–70% of their employees work for governance and compliance, right? And this has a reasoning, because it has become so tight from the regulators, to be compliant. There is need for optimization. So we said, okay, let's look into the space of RegTechs, and we were at the forefront. At that time, you wouldn't even find industry reports on RegTech. RegTech was a part of fintech, not recognized as a separate sector. And that's as crazy as it is. So on the one hand, you have to make a good research and understand which market trends are there, what's happening out there in the market, and you have to wrap your heads around with a lot of smart people that we also gather together with our experts, and be in discussions, exchange ideas to understand which is the next trend. And within this trend, the shovel in the gold rush. That's key point. Second part that is super important is we look for great founders, because there is one thing that is very interesting for startup investing, venture investing. You can invest in a great company with a great product, a great idea. If the founders are not amazing, you will fail. So the founders are basically the most important factor next to timing of what you invest. Important part, and finding the right product in the right market at the right time with the right founders, that's the hard part. On our end, this means we look at roughly 2,500 companies per year, and there's a lot of people involved that look 5–10 minutes on a deck, are in hundreds of calls with experts, other co-investors, business angels, venture funds, family offices, we're accelerators, anything you can imagine where we're involved in, we always search, right? There is not a single day where we're not out hunting the next great company for the portfolio. And sometimes this is frustrating because in 99% of the times you say no. Yeah? And once you find a company that is amazing and then have a great team, yeah, then you have a chance that this could be something. And then you look a little bit deeper. And then, of course, you know, the basics have to be there, the financials, the legal setup, etc. And sometimes you have to restructure the companies even to make them investable. We just did that in the UK. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, 3 to 4 companies a day is a lot. That's impressive. I did not know that. So as we're running out of time slowly, there's one thing I would really like to know, because, you know, I'm a young tech investor. My partner is already a veteran in it, but I have so much to learn in it. And there's all of these new things. And as you said, you know, to find a needle in a haystack. In your opinion, and also just a disclaimer for everyone listening to this and also looking at this on YouTube, this is not financial advice, and this is not an investment advice from Berthold, and nor for me. This is really just a conversation and some provocation of thought, if you want, and for you something to look up to. So please note this disclaimer. So my next question and last question, really, what are in your opinion, the top 3 startup tech companies to watch now, and why?
It's I mean, I'm obviously biased, right? Because I like the companies, I love the companies where we are invested in. I would say one of the companies definitely to look at is a company now called Bioma Diagnostics, or basically known to their retail analysis-based or next-generation sequencing analysis-based bioinformatics company that analyzes your gut microbiome and tells you gut system. And this is, you could say, your second brain. This is the most important factor to your immune system, etc. This company in particular is not interesting because it's a lifestyle trend and people say, hey, I want to learn what my microbiome looks like. This is interesting because in the field of medical research right now, the highest amount of research papers you find on the microbiome, and there's a reason to it. We have found out that this is an organ. So in total, I think the microbiome weighs roughly 4 kilos of a grown-up person. And the microbiome actually has a lot to do with your well-being. And it also knows beforehand if you have gut cancer, if you have if a certain therapy for cancer would work, especially if it's an oral one, so an immune therapy, for example. And there is extensive research being done by Bioma Diagnostics, and they're really short before becoming the world's first company that is actually allowed by the European Union as a medical product, so software as a medical product for Bioma Diagnostics. So they can really analyze in a hospital and say, okay, this patient, we should look a little bit closer because there is a high risk of a certain type of cancer coming. And this early alert system would allow to, identify certain indications way earlier, and the cancer is not even allowed to grow because you find it so early. Yeah, and I think that's groundbreaking. The founder, Barbara Sladek, is an Oxford PhD, extremely smart. Her co-founder, Nicolas Gachet, is a medical doctor. I think he was finished with his university and a full approved doctor by the age of 23. Was a programmer that he learned himself when he was a kid. And before my Bioma, he actually had, I think, 2 or 3 startups already. So besides university and being super fast in medical studies, he just decided to build some stuff. So insanely cool team. And if you're just curious how this works, order the My Bioma kit and check what your inner universe looks like. Another company that I think from my heart really is important. I'm a father of soon 3 kids. And what I think is really lacking these days is financial education. And I think I think it's terrible that people these days, you know, they grow up with the credit card of mom and dad, spending money, and they're getting used to debt, right? They buy something and they have an abo, they have a payment plan, right? Too big of a TV for my income, doesn't matter, I pay it in 24 months, right? And the same with the car on lease, etc., etc., etc. So there's a real debt trap that is there. And we identified actually the first fintech that we invested in, even though we said we don't like fintechs, but this one we said, okay, this is about financial health, right? And that's MONKEE, yeah? So like the monkey, but with 2 E, MONKEE. MONKEE from Tyrol is a startup founded by the 2 engineers and their dear friend from France. The 2 engineers are from Austria. One lives in Switzerland, one is in Austria. They used to be in the digital services space for Swarovski. So for the big retail brands, you know, globally active, young managers, and they said, well, we need to do something because, you know, financial health, financial fitness, this is a topic that really catches us. They have kids and they started to build a product that you simply love. You can save for your next car, for your next house, I don't know, maybe for an electric bike or an Xbox, yeah, in a very simple manner. You get a lot of benefits, extremely smart, good business case, and also a very lovable brand. And the company that really does great in the KPIs, most fintech would wish for those. The third company, it's a tough pick, and I'm sure some of my startups in the portfolio will say, hey, you should have mentioned me. So I'll just make a wild pick because it's one of the latest investments we've done in Switzerland. A company I mentioned before in the crypto market making space, FLOVTEC. FLOVTEC is incredibly interesting because they do something great and straight in a market where there is a lot of really, I would say, funny practice, right? So there is market makers out there that are not regulated and they do wash trading, they do sniper attacks on token bridges, and you as a token issuer, you are actually getting frauded, right, by your market maker. You pay them good money and they actually work against you. Yeah? Maybe on purpose, maybe not on purpose. We don't know, but there is a lot of funny practice, I would say. And what we liked about them is the fact that they are regulated in Switzerland, fully automated by the algorithms, very transparent. Yeah, so every single trade, everything is super transparent to the token issuers. And I mean, it's no surprise that literally every day a new token issuer knocks on their door and asks them to help them with their project. And I believe, you know, blockchain is technology that came to stay. We always say, hey, this is a bubble, crypto, you know, now the last wave, and now everybody that, you know, knew it before says now it crashed again, and, you know, this whole crypto thing, it's all gone soon. I believe this is wrong. When we look back to the tech bubble in the early 2000s, everybody said, you know, the internet is now gone, yeah, and this whole tech bubble, thank God we're back to real business. But technology that was invented back then, yeah, like NFC technology, which went on the stock exchange around the 2000s, is now built in every cell phone. It took quite a while, right, to go there. We had a social network in 2001 listed on the stock exchange in the US, founded by a British and a German guy. Happy Googling if you find it. This company actually had the problem that at that time you didn't have cell phones, so nobody was addicted to making pictures of his food, of themselves all the time, etc. So there was not enough usage all the time. So it was kind of boring to have this internet platform where you log in maybe in the morning if you're a nerd, or, you know, once in the evening, once a week. It gets kind of boring if you wait forever for somebody to answer, and if there's not constant updates, right? So this great technology, but wrong timing. And I think there's a lot more examples in the Web 4.0 and also in cyber technologies, cryptography technologies, etc., that we see today in production that were actually built by founders back in the days where they maybe didn't find the right market fit. And the same applies to the blockchain space. If you're now looking at this, this is in the very early days, but it has the potential to change a lot. Yeah, there is now in the decentralized finance space, for example, there is protocols that act like stock exchanges, yeah, for tokens, fully automated. Yeah, there is no stock exchange anymore. There is a protocol doing that, yeah, which is super complex. And of course, it's in the early days, and there will be a lot of updates. If you think about Ethereum or the platform, smart contracts, you can do so many things where you can update constantly. And I think we haven't even touched the surface yet of what's possible. I always think of it like an iceberg, right? We see this little peak, but there is so much underneath the surface of water, yeah, what can be lifted, and there is great potential. And even if some projects fail today, they actually lay the roots for technology of tomorrow. And if you look on platforms like GitHub, etc., there is code contributed every day, enormous amount of code by enormous amounts of young developers and experienced developers from all around the world. I think there will be also changes in the near future when we go into quantum computing and all these kind of things. But I think that's a topic for another Zoom o'clock call.
Yes, for sure. Definitely. Also, when we get into quantum, quantum mechanics and everything, that is what I'm studying right now. So we definitely need to pick that conversation up in the next one. So our time has run out, way run out, but I just really, this is so interesting, and I have personally learned a lot. We'll definitely look up some of the companies you mentioned as well, and I make sure for everyone listening in that I will put a link of each of these companies below, and also of your company and your food CV, so people can look you up. One last question, which I ask everyone, it's a very, very brief one. What is your latest book finding and why?
My latest book finding.
A book where you were just like, wow, like, my head is exploding. That's awesome.
I have to look up the exact name. I just bought a book a couple of days ago on personal branding, because I actually never read about it, and I felt I'm really bad in Instagram and all these kind of things. So I wanted to be better in that. But let me check what the name was. It was recommended so many times within a short time frame that I actually had to buy it.
It makes sense as well, a book like that, because nowadays, even on LinkedIn, professional networks and everything, because we are all online and everything is done online over camera, personal branding has become so important, because we have a lack of that physical connectivity when we meet, that needs to be the top priority, right? When you want to sell something or want to give a good impression. So for sure.
So this is Lead the Future, Shape Your Brand, Personal Branding for CEOs, Top Managers, and Business Leaders by Haufe. And the author is Oksana Zeitler.
Perfect.
Yeah, a German lady, and it's supposed to be a great book. I haven't had the chance to read it yet, but I'm happy to report in the next call. Other than that, we have just read a couple publications for business, but that would be rather boring advices.
Well, thank you so much, Berthold. That is a great advice, definitely also for me, who works a lot on social media platforms and also with companies on that. I will definitely check out the book too. And yeah, until we meet again on Zoom o'clock with myself and my amazing guests, dear Berthold, I really thank you for your time. That was fantastic. I wish you a beautiful afternoon. All the best for the new baby to come. Congratulations. How exciting. I myself know how it feels like. We are not far behind you. And yeah, until we meet again, thank you for your time. And I make sure I share all of the relevant links below. And for people listening in, please do share the Zoom o'clocks. If you like it, rate it, comment, and yeah, give us some stars on Apple Podcasts and everywhere where you find us, because only by sharing, it shows caring, and we can reach a wider audience with these interesting guests of mine and the topics that really matters. So thank you so much, Berthold, and have a wonderful rest of the afternoon.
You too. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.